Hello everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Life Hype Kinesiology Korner. Today I'm continuing with the series on boxing recovery. The specific topic of today is rapid weight loss and hypohydration, and then after that, rehydration. Again, with this video, although the main subject is boxing, the concepts still apply to all activities, so stick around and you may find something interesting and informative. A common occurrence among athletes in combat sports is a drastic weight cut before competition. It allows someone who is generally larger to fight in a weight class lower than their resting weight. On the surface, this seems like a fantastic idea, ignoring all side effects for now. Being taller and more muscular than your opponent should give you some advantage. The issue arises with how athletes go about the process of dropping weight. There are some other training methods being put into place pre-fight, but for now we'll only be looking at the weight loss components. These processes will most likely differ between athletes based on their preferences and what weight they're shooting for. If you are less excited about the negative aspects of dehydration and would rather hear about how to safely rehydrate, skip forward to this time here. Currently I'm working with a boxer who's prepping for a championship fight. That's who a lot of this info is kind of for or based on. We're a little under 6 weeks out at the time this video comes out. As an aside, I am acting as an observer for the purpose of research, as well as providing information that I gather on these topics. This boxer's walking around weight is around 165 pounds, and the fight will be in the 152 pound weight class. So it's not an insignificant amount of weight to drop in a short amount of time. The process that he'll be taking is as follows. His diet will remain unchanged for the 6 weeks leading up to the fight, and 1 day prior to weigh-in, he will not be eating any food. In the week leading up to weigh-in, he will be going through a process of drinking a large volume of water at the beginning of the week and steadily decreasing by the final day. The final day, he has an extreme dehydration period to shock the body into expelling a large amount of fluid, reducing weight down to the target fighting weight. This boxer has a fast metabolism, so the lack of change in diet should be manageable. As far as exercise goes, leading up to the final week before the fight, training will remain moderately unchanged. When the final week begins, strength training is cut out, leaving only cardiovascular endurance training. And the final day before weigh-in, no training is done. So, on to the actual meat and potatoes of the video, where the research comes into play. We're interested in the effects of hypohydration or extreme dehydration. One of the most studied impacts of hypohydration is changes in aerobic performance. The consensus is along the lines of hypohydration is bad, and it leads to a decrement in performance. This seems to occur more in warm to hot climates than colder ones. The negative impact comes about when skin temperature rises past a threshold. On this concept, Saka and colleagues investigated the roles of skin temperature and level of hydration. In euhydrated subjects, hot skin alone, with a modest core temperature elevation, impairs submaximal aerobic performance. In hypohydrated subjects, aerobic performance begins to be impaired when skin temperatures exceed 27 degrees Celsius, and even warmer skin exacerbates the aerobic performance impairment. They conclude with, hot skin, not high core temperature, is the primary factor impairing aerobic exercise performance when euhydrated, and that hypohydration exacerbates this effect. In a later study by Saka and colleagues, similar conclusions are drawn with regard to the temperature effect. Hypohydration does not impair submaximal intensity aerobic performance in cold or cool environments, sometimes impairs aerobic performance in temperate environments, and usually impairs aerobic performance in warm to hot environments. Building on that idea, further explanation is given on the physiological mechanisms caused by hypohydration that lead to a loss in aerobic performance. Hypohydration elicits intracellular and extracellular water loss. Isoosmotic hypovolemia results in greater plasma loss for a given water deficit than hypertonic hypovolemia from sweat loss. It appears that instead of being a primary cause for loss in aerobic performance, hypohydration exacerbates problems that are already occurring. The major focus of research into this topic is aimed at dehydration coming from heat stress. Being that our focus is on boxing and pre-performance intentional dehydration, we will turn our attention briefly to diuretic-induced hypohydration, which is more similar to the fluid restriction method. For the study we're looking at here, cyclists exercised in control and 4-day diuretic-induced hypohydration conditions. No differences in oxygen uptake during exercise were observed between trials. No differences were observed in plasma lactate and serum free fatty acid concentrations, either at rest or during exercise. Hypohydration led to lower glucose, rate of appearance and rate of disappearance at rest and 15 minutes and 30 minutes of exercise, but at 60 minutes, the effects were reversed. These results indicate that diuretic-induced reductions in plasma volume decreases glucose kinetics during moderate intensity dynamic exercise in the absence of changes in total carbohydrate and fat oxidation. If you're paying close attention, I didn't mention aerobic performance, but the last study is about substrate storage and usage. Substrate is another term for fuel. Analyzing these findings, hypohydration led to alteration in energy substrates in blood plasma based on duration and intensity of exercise. At a point of longer exercise duration, hypohydration as a variable had less of an impact than the exercise itself, the common variable between trials. Diving more in depth to this article, the authors note the difference in methods for dehydration. Other models used to induce hypohydration, such as heat dehydration, exercise, and heat and fluid restriction, all result in an elevation in osmolality. With these forms of hypohydration, the hyperosmolality mobilizes fluid from the intracellular to the extracellular space in an attempt to defend against the plasma volume loss. In the results I showed before, it mentions that the experimental diuretic trials had lowered glucose. Further on in the results, this point is expanded upon. They note that plasma glucagon is increased in the diuretic trials. Glucagon is a hormone produced in the pancreas that breaks down glycogen and glucose. Late in prolonged exercise, there is a higher concentration of plasma glucagon. So there are similarities within the control and diuretic trials with regard to blood glucose regulation. Directing ourselves more back to our topic of boxing, the next two studies I want to look at focus specifically on rapid weight loss for competition in combat sports. Aside from cardiovascular endurance and aerobic performance, other elements of an athlete's performance become affected by rapid weight loss, whether by dehydration or other means. The next element to hone in on is mood. Anecdotally, the psychological stress is high with rapid weight reduction. The boxer I'm working with mentioned his tendency for irritability and negative mood during the pre-competition week. There's also research to back this up. Repeated measures multivariate analysis of variance results indicated that rapid weight loss among boxers was associated with poor performance, increased anger, fatigue, tension, and reduced vigor. This is a valued point to be bringing up. As shown later in the paper, mood has been shown to be an effective predictor of performance in combat sport. For example, in karate, 92% of winning and losing performance could be correctly classified from pre-competition mood. The last performance element is a group of physiological changes: muscle contraction velocity, strength, and power output changes. Combative athletes were measured at weigh-in and pre-competition to determine their levels of hydration. At weigh-in, 84% of the participants were hypohydrated. Before competition, the negative impacts from hypohydration decreased but did not completely reach euhydration levels. A variety of physical tests were given to compare the potential detriments to their performance capacity. Although they did not reach fully normal levels at the time of competition, enough hydration had been recovered to compensate for the weight cut. Now that we've gotten all the negative impacts out of the way, let's get on to the most important topic: safe rehydration. Some important factors to look at are volume of fluid to be ingested, the rate of fluid ingestion, and fluid composition. The amount of liquid consumed to rehydrate must not only compensate for fluid already lost, but for continuous fluid loss. A volume of fluid greater than that lost during exercise is required to restore water balance. Around 1.5 liters per liter lost is recommended. And although we are talking in large volume, it is important to spread out that fluid uptake over a longer duration. Studies have shown that it is less effective to immediately refill. Other than refilling the fluid loss, additional macronutrient and electrolyte refueling is also necessary. So in conclusion, excessive dehydration is not good. It's rather common in athletes, especially in combat sports, but the negative impact to performance and mood state are acute and reversible. I didn't get into it fully, but proper rehydration doesn't just mean drinking a bunch of water. In fact, too much of that could also lead to some major health problems. So that's all I've got for now. Remember, I'm not a doctor. I just research scientific articles online and report back. These videos are for educational purposes. I'm going to be continuing with the boxing-centered videos while I'm working with this boxer. Thanks for watching this episode of the Life Hype Kinesiology Korner. I am Andrew the Kinesiologist. If you're interested in exercise science stuff like this, check out our website for articles. And if you're interested in workout videos or personal training, head over to our Patreon to join some of our workouts. I've got nothing else, so see ya.